The conversation has been explored since 1798, when Thomas Malthus first published his essay on population growth. While it's clear there's only so much human life the planet can handle sustainably, the topic of overpopulation is an extremely complicated one, and we'll be discussing some of the nuance behind it on today's trigger warning. Recently, the Executive Secretary of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, Christiane Figueres, has gone on record stating that the world must make every effort to decrease population growth. And for what it's worth, I agree. It simply makes sense to maintain a stable population in order to ensure sustainable development and allow all living humans the highest level of human rights and opportunity. It's been estimated that by 2050, the planet will have close to 10 billion humans living on it. While some may disagree that it's too much for the Earth to handle, I have to respectfully point out that there are already the serious issues of starvation across many underdeveloped nations. Simply because you have access to money in grocery stores does not mean that there are enough resources the world over to provide every human being with a warm meal and bed. Now, overpopulation is an extremely touchy subject for many, and I can almost guarantee that I'll be getting a lot of hate for my opinions on this matter. But hear me out before you dismiss me. Now, I'm definitely for population stability. That said, and with the information I have available to me, I agree with the statement that the best course of action for the entire human race is to lower our population. There is a concept that is referred to as optimum population. What this refers to is the size of a population that produces the best results according to chosen end targets. The estimate of the optimum population was put forth by a research team led by biologist Paul Ehrlich to be roughly 1.5 to 2 billion people. So while that estimate can be argued, particularly with advances in technology and agricultural progression, let's just assume for the sake of argument that Ehrlich was correct in that estimate. So what do we do? With a population of over 7 billion now, suggesting that we lower it brings up some scary thoughts. But while people's minds often go to the worst possible conclusion, namely drastic measures such as genocide, I don't honestly believe that any worldwide effort to reduce population through such measures is going to be taken too kindly by the populace in question. Rather, what the UN's Executive Secretary on Climate Change is suggesting is that we make every effort to decrease population growth, namely by means of birth control. It's important in this discussion to make clear the difference between birth rates and total fertility rates. While birth rates refer to the total number of live births per 1,000 population within the span of a year, the total fertility rate is an estimate of the average number of children birthed by a single woman during her childbearing years. Since 1950, worldwide birth rates have dropped significantly, from a crude birth rate of 37.2 to almost half that rate in 2015 at 18.2 births per 1,000 people. A huge drop, but it's difficult to make estimates of just how many people are born in a generation and how that affects overall world population in the end. So, to that end, we'll be taking a closer look at worldwide total fertility rates. While in places like Canada, the TFR is at a rate of 1.59, the increase of overpopulation is due largely to open border policies in which we encourage immigration. But it's also important to note the elephant in the room. It seems that the TFR of a nation is inextricably linked to that nation's gross domestic product. In other words, the more developed a country, the lower the birth rate. Conversely, we see the opposite effect happening all across underdeveloped nations. With the sole exception of Afghanistan, the 30 countries with the highest total fertility rate, ranging from between 4.5 to 7 births per woman, are all African countries. The very same countries that suffer from starvation, disease, poverty, and war. The very same countries in which 1 in 10 children will die during childbirth. Regardless of infant mortality, it can't be denied that the populations of these nations are rising, and the resources are scarce. However, and this is where it gets complicated, we in the Western world, with the notable exceptions of the United States and France, are not reproducing fast enough to replace our populations. There is plenty of evidence to suggest that this is due to women taking control of their choices through birth control, which lends to the fact that more developed nations, by and large, tend to have much lower birth rates. And so, while the issue of overpopulation is a concern worldwide, the complications arise in that developed nations have literally no say in how less developed nations handle issues such as reproductive rights. In the same vein, developed nations with low fertility and birth rates are already doing their part in decreasing global population growth. So it's unfair to suggest that they be held responsible for birth rates in other countries. With that said, it's clear that with less reproduction, resources in these nations will spread much further and will lead to a happier, healthier populace. But short of invasive interventionism, what options do we have to address these issues? Child poverty, war, disease, and starvation are serious issues in these places. And hearing about such things tugs at the heartstrings of any person with a shred of empathy. One could argue that it's simply not our problem, until such time as it becomes all of our problems, which, if these trends continue, it will be. So what do you guys think? Is it our responsibility to intervene? Would such actions constitute imperialism or foster a sense of worldwide responsibility? Is it racism to suggest that we roll into Africa and start telling them what's what? What's the best way to tackle the issue responsibly while allowing these countries their autonomy? Would sanctions such as China's former one-child policy be an acceptable compromise? And moreover, would we be willing to accept such sanctions in our own countries? Let me know in the comments below. As for me, I can honestly say I have no idea how to responsibly deal with the issue. But moreover, I don't have the authority or the inclination to make demands of them that I would be unwilling to follow myself. As such, and here's where I might get a little bit of hate, I have been for some time an advocate of exploring the idea of licensing parenthood. I'll give you a second to rage. Now, I say this as a father myself, a father who, when he entered fatherhood, was largely unprepared and ignorant as to what it takes to raise a child. A father who lacked the resources, wisdom, and such to do it effectively. Over the years, I have learned, along with my child, and gained the wisdom needed. But I can't help but imagine how much better her life would have been if I was prepared for it. And I look out even here in my own city, and I see abused, neglected, and exploited children everywhere. Children of parents who use them for a welfare check, as a means to get drug money. Children of parents who do not respect the job. And children of parents who are woefully inept and inadequate to perform such an important task as to raise a child. We require licenses in order to drive a vehicle on straight, reasonably ordered roads safely, so that we respect the machines which we drive. Machines that can, without a shred of a doubt, kill you or any innocent bystander with even a momentary lapse of attention or judgment. But for children, we need no license. Psychopaths can have them, sociopaths can have them, pedophiles can have them. And they can raise them to become psychopaths, sociopaths, and pedophiles. There comes a time where we have to accept drastic measures imposed on us for the greater good of everyone, particularly the kids. But that time, as it stands, is probably far off. Anyways, guys, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on many of the things I've discussed in this video. Currently, the right to reproduce is not listed in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, so arguably it's not against human rights to license such acts. But is it draconian to introduce legislation to ensure that a nation's children are raised by responsible parents? While arguably not fair to parents who fail to meet the standards of being licensed, such measures would never be to their benefit to begin with, but to benefit the children of the next generation. So let's talk about this a bit in the comments. And if you like this video, or it made you think, feel free to click like, and by all means, subscribe. See you next time.